You have heard this morning I was referring to a Shatibi. And in fact, he's not the first one who started to think, in fact, some scholars started to think without getting out of the deductive or inductive schools of usul al-fiqh, min al-usuliyin, that in fact we need to have another methodology, that we can have another methodology, which is the way we question the text. So it was in fact to read the texts and to try not only to get from the text the rules, this is done, this has been done, this is respectful, this is good, but the methodology saying, in fact, what is important is to ask what are the objectives of the text. In fact, it's not new. Even in the Shafi'i, when dealing with specific issues, they were doing something which is important. When you have a ruling, when you have a hukm, on, for example, anything that you have to pray or that you have to avoid alcohol, what the scholars were doing dealing with a specific issue was to ask the raison d'être of this ruling, al-'illah. Al-'illah is, why do we have to avoid that? Why do we have to do that? There is always a reason behind a hukm, a ruling. So in fact is what was called the intention of the Shariah, which is the creator. He had an intention when he told us, don't do this or do that. Okay? What is the reason behind the ruling? And in fact, if you ask the reason behind, you ask two questions. What was the intention of God, and what is the objective of the ruling? Okay? Al-'illah is two things. Al-'illah is, why are you doing what you are doing? It's what was the intention, God's intention, and what is the objective of what you are doing. And in some verses, one of the easiest ways to come back to the Quran, and you will find very easy, very explicit verses when it comes to some of the objectives. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling Musa alayhi salam, and he's calling him in Surah Taha, إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. I'm God, I am the only God. Worship me, perform your prayer, and then you have in the Quran itself the answer. وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. Perform prayer in order to remember me. So, عِلَّةَ الصَّلَاة is remembrance. Okay? So, Allah is telling you, I'm asking you to pray to remember me. And the objective of your prayers is to remember Him. So His intention is for you to remember, and your objective is for you to remember Him. You get that? And then what Al-Juwayni, who was the teacher of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he came by saying, okay, it might be that the way we have to read the text is through the objectives. That the Quran is telling us something, all these prescriptions, all these obligations is for something specific. So we need to get the objectives. And he started categorizing our rules not in a way which is deductive or inductive, is through the objectives. And what is interesting in Madrasat al-Maqaasid, starting with Al-Juwayni, is that when you question the objectives, by definition, you can't just rely on rules, you need to rely on context. Because to get this objective in a specific time, you need the two together. You need to know the rules and to know the objective, to know the context to implement the objective. No faithfulness to the objective with the only faithfulness to the text. You need to understand the context. Which is a new way to put it. And he started by categorizing. So he had a vertical and horizontal way of categorizing by saying these are the priorities and these are the principles and these are the different fields. So different fields on which you have to different fields where you are trying to reach the objectives and priorities. And this is what Abu Hamid al-Ghazali kept in Ihya Ulum al-Din, and in fact, no, it's not in al-Mustasfa, is another book on Usul al-Fiqh. He came with an understanding of Maqaasid, where he was categorizing this. So he followed his teacher, al-Juwayni, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, and this is what I'm talking about in the book. He came with, once again, a horizontal and vertical and horizontal categorization by saying, when you read the Quran, you have priority objectives, secondary objectives, third objectives, and you have different fields. Okay? And this is what you need to get that. Why? In fact, what is interesting is for the Muslim intellect, never understand the rules without understanding the ends. The rules are here to achieve an end. Okay? If you pray, is to achieve an end. So it might be that you pray Dhuhr just before, you achieve the rule, but you miss the end. You understand what I mean? The end was to remember Him. It might be that your body prayed, but your heart missed the objective. You were with your car, you were with your... But this is very human, you know. Umar ibn al-Khattab sometimes was praying and he was thinking about the strategy of the next war. And he said that. And to say this is it's just to show how it could happen, that we can, to praise the very essence of remembrance. And in the time of this very essence of remembrance, you can forget. And the point is that if you forget the ends, you end up respecting the rules, but without getting the meaning. The school of Maqaasid is coming with Usul al-Fiqh by saying fiqh and Usul al-Fiqh and anything which has to do with rules must be understood in the light of the objectives, meaning in the light of the meaning. You know, rules and objective are pushing you, obliging you to come back to the very essence of the meaning of the rules. Because you get the rules in the light of the meaning, is why. So it's to question every single rule by saying why, and sometimes your knowledge is to say why I don't know, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. Sami'na wa ata'na, meaning I'm asking why, but sometimes I don't know why. And sometimes when it comes to society, I need to answer this why. I need to come with a why. I need to get the point. So Abu Hamid al-Ghazali came with this, and later, and by the way, what is interesting is that Shafi'i came with the deductive, Abu Hanifa was the inductive, and the great majority of the scholars who are coming from al-Maqaasid are coming from the Maliki. With, you know, al-Masalih al-Mursala, they are coming from there. And one of my teachers, in fact, one of my shuyukh is really, in fact, al-Shatibi. He wrote the book al-Muwafaqat. I used this when I was writing to be a European Muslim. I came back to him in Madrasat al-Maqaasid, and he came with a strict categorization with a very synthetic mind. It was trying to synthesize everything. Say, okay, instead of having all this, let us come to what is needed. knowing what are the main objectives. And he came with a categorization which is known by everyone today, but it's not coming from him. In fact, it's coming from Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. And he came with this and explained the dimension by saying there are 3 levels of priority. So this is the vertical. الضروريات, مقاصد الشريعة الضرورية, مقاصد مقاصد الشريعة الحجيات والتحسينيات. So الضروريات this is the highest level, and then you have based on needs, and then based on beautifying your way of worshipping God. And there are 3 levels, and there are 5 fields, 5 main principles. So there is مقاصد الشريعة الضرورية الحجية والتحسينية, and then you have 5 fields. Islam is coming, and all what is revealed and what was coming with the Prophet ﷺ is first to protect your deen. You have to protect your deen, your religion, and the way of life, which I will come to this because we have to also to define these words. Second is in-nafs. It's yourself, your personal integrity, everything which is coming in the Quran, it's useful. And he's saying what was said by Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya. Everything is about masalih al-nas. So in fact, everything which is coming from the Quran is to protect your personal integrity and nafs. And then al-aql, your intelligence, your intellect. Everything in the Quran. Why you can't drink alcohol? Because it's targeting your intellect by pushing you not to be aware of what you are doing, so it's bad for your intellect. So everything is based on that. The 4th one is about nasl, progeny. Everything in Islam is coming to protect your family, your ties, family ties. Everything it's protected by Islam. And the 5th one is about amwal, your goods, what you own, all your wealth are protected. So this is from where some scholars are saying private property and your goods are all protected by Islam. Al-Qarafi, who came later, added something which was interesting by saying al-ird is also an objective, which is dignity, the dignity of human being, which is an important concept because when you come afterward in our time talking about human rights, al-ird, dignity, it's also something which is important as a reference. Now, how did he come to this? Abu Hamid al-Ghazali and himself. In fact, he's reading the scriptural sources and trying to get what are the priorities, what the Quran is. So all the rules are thought in the light of the objectives. And you extract the objective by mapping all the rules, saying, oh, all this is to do what? To achieve that. So illat al-hukm here is giving you the intention and the objective so you can project. So it's a projective way of dealing with specific ruling. But always giving, understanding the rules in the light of the objectives and the ends. And by doing so, you understand that if you want to achieve a specific end, you need to know the rule and you need to know how you are going to implement the rule to achieve this end. Okay? So it's a new way of putting it, but pushing you to be intellectually much more dynamic. Much more dynamic. By the way, I'm not saying that this last school is dismissing all what was done by the previous schools. No, they are using Shafi'i, they are using Abu Hanifa, but now putting this first methodology into the second one, which is let us deduce from the text, not forgetting the ends. So it's what I would call a double dialectical process, which is you and the text, you and the context. Okay, it's this double. And when you deal with the text, you have a third dimension, which is the text with its own context, and you trying from your context to understand the text within its own context, which is what the scholars did. And when you read the scholars, you need to understand the text with its own context and the scholar with his own context. And to understand that. As I'm always taking, the reference that I'm taking is a Tabari, for example, when he speaks about women. You better not implement what he's saying. It's quite tough about violence and domestic violence. And this is where, when you read this, you understand that he's talking within a specific culture where beating was understood as the right way to understand the Quran from his culture. And it's very tough. It's even, to tell you the truth, now reading the Quran is not acceptable. It's a Tabari. Tabari, coming with something which is a cultural projection onto the text. And then this is where you have to, okay, the text, the context, Tabari and his context. Why is he able to say this at that specific time? And you have to be critical. If you're not critical with the culture of the scholar, you end up not knowing what to do with the answers of the scholar in a specific way of reading the text. You get that? It's not easy. This is why all this discussion is not for anyone to come and say, okay, I'm going to, become a mufti in 1.5 hours. You can't do that. It's serious. It's a serious question. Let me end on this call with two things that are important, because I have been, of course, in fact, influenced by the three schools. And what I'm going to propose after the break is a new way of dealing with the scriptural sources, but very much influenced by the school of objective, that's not only. Because I really think that what is coming from the two main other schools, the school of Abu Hanifa or Hanafiya and Shafi'i, it's very important. Where did they come from? How were they able to come with this daruriyat? In fact, it was not a question for me. I thought, okay, it's coming from, a deductive approach and trying to read. Till I read something two books, one from al-Raisuni and the other one from Kamali. And Kamali was referring to something which was interesting. I read that book on the Usul al-Fiqh, the book that he wrote. And then he wrote something different, which is a very short introduction to Shariah. And he said something that I checked afterwards. And he was partially right. But the whole philosophy that he is extracting is very, very interesting. In fact, the 5 main principles or objectives that he set for Maqaasid al-Shariah, الدين العقل النفس النسل والأموال, in fact are positive objectives based on the negative dimension of prohibitions. In fact, the great majority of the scholars up to now are of the opinion that if you change your religion, you can be killed. You know that. This is the great majority, up to now. Which was not, by the way, the only. Sufyan al-Thawri, 8th century, was of the opinion that this is not right. But this is another discussion. To change, مَنْ بَدَّلَ دِينَهُ فَاقْتُلُوهُ. The one who is changing his or her religion, kill him. In fact, because to change your religion means that you can be killed, one of the priority for you is to protect your religion. You get that? It's the positive objective extracted from the absolute prohibition of changing your religion that you can't, so you have to protect. Exactly the same with the nafs, that you cannot kill except in specific situations. The same with your intellect, that you cannot drink, prohibition of alcohol, and the amwal, that you cannot steal. All the prohibitions are read in a positive way by saying, in fact, the opposite of this prohibition is the main objectives. It doesn't work always like this because it could be it's open to discussion. But I think it's quite interesting to get this understanding. Why? Because it might be that in the end, you cannot get all the objectives only by reading the prohibitions. And this is my position. I think it's wrong. It's not wrong, it's not enough. It's a starting point to think about why the prohibitions, علة المحرمات, the illah, the raison d'être of why it's prohibited, and yet you come with the objectives. But it's not enough. We need to go much beyond that. But you can't just think negatively about why this is prohibited. You need to know what is positive and in which way you are going to be positive. And especially when there is no clear prohibition. For example, when it comes, well, you're going to say, okay, about entertainment and arts. If we don't agree on the fact that it's all prohibited, what is going to be objective? When the Prophet ﷺ is saying to Hanzala, sa'atan fasa'a, ya Hanzala, that you have to rest for 1 hour to feel good in order to know how to pray. So what is the objective of my entertainment, my time of resting? Do we have objectives here? It might be that in a traditional society it was not a question. You can't educate your kids in the current society if you don't respond to this question. You can't. You can come with all the rules you want if you don't tackle this question of entertainment, culture, and arts. If you're not coming with an answer, what is the objective? Except if you say, I have the answer. Haram. That's it. And go ahead. You can't take this decision. Some are taking this decision. Some of our brothers in Mauritius saying, you should not watch TV. Haram. And one of the guys came to him saying, but there is a TV in your living room, only for the news. You have this, we are touching very sensitive things because this is where culture sometimes is more powerful than education. In fact, for our kids, the time they spend in school is less effective as to shaping their personality than anything which is peer relationship, outside culture. This is where they are shaping it's not at school only. So this is what we know. Today, we have statistics on this, and we cannot just avoid this discussion. Last point that I want so the point for me is, how do we come to something which is more positive in the way we set the objectives? Not only on prohibitions, but on positive, constructive objectives. Do we find things like this in the Quran? Yes. Yes. Because, يَا أَيَّتُهَا النَّفْسُ الْمُطْمَئِنَّةِ, oh, you who have the level of inner peace. It's not coming because you avoid the muharramat. It's not this. It's then when you are at peace with God. It's something which is beyond that. I don't feel good because I'm avoiding what is bad. I feel good but because I am within what is good. Even if, yes, I'm avoiding, but there is a state which is this connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beyond what is al-muharramat, is something which is special. Can we get that? Yes or no? Are we obsessed with you only feel good when you avoid what is bad? Or are we able to come with an Islamic discourse, you feel good because you feel good? Which is based on a special relationship with God and with yourself. Not obsessed with not transgressing, but feeling good within. In something which is a journey towards Allah. And this changed everything. This is why, the way you deal with the hadith, al-ihsan, it's essential. كَأَنَّكَ تَرَى is you are with him and you feel good, but not he's watching you. You may feel bad. You understand? The understanding of the hadith is completely different. If you take it from within, feel good he's close to you, or be careful he's watching you. You don't say the same thing, but this is the same text. And then you come with the objectives. Al-ihsan is not to feel, the way we are saying this to our kids. Go and kill this animal without anyone seeing you. You know this story? To 3 of them, 2 are going and they try to kill. The 3rd is, I can't do that. Why? Because I know that Allah was watching me. I say, yes, he got it. It's a good story. But still, the way we talk about Allah's presence is, He's watching you. If you are doing bad, He's there. But there is something which is deeper than that. This is a start. You know, as Imam al-Nawawi was saying, there is Iman al-Tajir, that you give something because you are going to erode it, and there is something which is beyond that, which is this relationship that you have with God, which is, I'm doing this because He's with me, not watching my bad things, but helping me in the good dimension. He's my companion for the good, not my the spectator of my bad things, or the judge of my bad. It's the way we talk about Allah. And this is where the Maqaasid are so important, the way you said them. So the last point that I wanted to make is the 14th century Ibn Taymiyyah was dealing with the objectives. And in fact, he's one of the first scholars to say it's not enough, the 5. Because there is one set of objectives that are missing here, which is the intimate objectives. That at the end of the day, at-tawheed, and to come close to Allah, is not only to come close to Allah by respecting the rules, it's to come close to Allah by this disposition of the heart towards Him. And in fact, he's the first one to say there are maqasid missing here because we need to deal with intimate objectives, not only outward objectives. And I think it's interesting because from within, he's not sacralizing this. While we have today some scholars, they are sacralizing, the 5. Always when you have people talking, these are the 5 principles, this is 1, 2, or 3. It's as if it was in the Quran. No, these are people in their time, they try to find the main objectives. And that's all good. But when the world is so complex today, you cannot just stick to this. And the first one to say this is, there is something which is missing, is the way we deal with our own heart. And this is why we got that from the very beginning. Why I'm saying this, because today I think that the 5 main principles are not enough, that the world is so complex that we cannot go from prohibition to permission and objectives. And more importantly, there are different dimensions today that we have to take into account to set the objectives of our understanding of usul al-fiqh today. And I will come to these proposals after the break, inshallah. To question themselves when the text is open for interpretation. But we also, in this case, should be able to say, for example, open for interpretation is not always open in the same way. In fact, the Quran, if you take what I was saying, the fact that it was revealed in 23 years, that there are steps, that the Arabs were killing their daughters, and then there are steps. And this verse is coming by saying first, it's a situation of anger, that, the first reaction of the Prophet ﷺ was he answered back, just beat him back. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming to teach him, no, that's not the way. You're not going to open the door for this kind of situation between a man and a woman, that if he beats you, you beat him back. But in a situation where there is anger, you have, within the verse, it's وَعِدُهُنَّ وَهْجُرُهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ وَضْرِبُهُنَّ 3 levels. So you have a sequence which is a historical, it's step by step, and then even in the verse, you have an understanding that it came third. Meaning by this that the first understandable reaction in situation of anger is not to beat, is وَعِدُهُنَّ, so master, check yourself, and then take a distance. Yeah. And then in this situation, وَضْرِبُهُنَّ, if you are calm to come back and to beat her, you might have a problem here. But
unless you thought that that's what God wanted you to do if you were
still angry. Let me finish. Yeah. That's the point. This is one step. And then you carry on and you come to Surah Al-Rum. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة. As I am always saying, mawadda is this love as to for your qualities, and rahmah is mercy as for dealing with your mutual weaknesses. And then you come to the whole dimension, the whole message, and at the end you understand and that you are following the Prophet ﷺ, that he never did it. So here's your example. Now, it's open for interpretation in a specific way here, that if you just stop on one verse, you take from the verse, you forget the whole dynamic, and you distort the text. For me, it's clear that he is wrong. He is wrong in the way, from his culture, he took one step in the sequences of the message to make his point. So it's to confirm his culture. But the point is that for me, this is normal, and this is the risk if Allah wants the text to remain open for our eternal interpretation in context. This is the risk that we may face. So it's something which is, how do you educate people to go from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took a decision which was a pedagogical way of doing it. And this is where we should always, from where we are, take a critical take on our culture without reducing the text to one part of, or one verse, or one angle only, and to take the whole thing. So we can't at the same time be happy that the text is open and say, oh, the text is too open to let this interpretation. But where you are right is to say, it's not because the text is open that all the interpretations are as valuable, that we have to be critical. And this is why, for example, some in the time of Tabari were not agreeing with him. So at that, he had a very specific understanding. So this is why we have to be critical and not to let this be our reference by saying there is a problem here in the way he is projecting his culture on the text. And this is what we have to deconstruct. So once again, I understand that, okay, we would like it on some issues to be the Quran to be quite clear and to say this is, but we can't get this clear response by saying no, if we are not understanding that this text was in a specific context revealed through steps, and for us to understand the objectives and to be able to say this is not acceptable, and with this openness as for the text to be able to be critical towards the culture. So these are the two dimensions, but we cannot have both ways together. It's clarity and then openness as for interpretation. No, we can't.
No question.
And especially that we have to educate people. And it wouldn't have been understood in specific situation. This, you have to go through these steps. So this is where it's in history, and we need to extract what should be the eternal answer. But for me, it's quite clear. I cannot say, oh, it's an accepted.
Yeah, a difference of opinion then. Somebody says it's
No.
just a difference of
No,
opinion.
it's not difference of opinion. Because for me, it's quite clear that what the text is saying and what the Prophet ﷺ is showing is completely different from this. This is wrong.
So not only you're saying that it's incorrect, but you're saying it's invalid as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Incorrect and invalid.
Yeah.
I would say, but I'm quite clear on that, even though I know that some scholars, when they are taking part of the verse, are saying, to beat a woman, if Allah is saying this, it means that it has to be, no. He's saying this in a very specific context, in one of the sequence of something which is beyond this, and our model is the Prophet ﷺ, domestic violence is not Islamic. Yeah. No, it exists. For example, what was understood by the scholars from the very beginning, when it comes to slavery. Islam was revealed in a time where slavery was there. All the rulings that are connected to slavery or related to slavery are showing that the objective of Islam is to free the people, is to free them. So we have rules for the time there is slavery with the vision that we have to free ourselves from slavery. And for all the scholars of today, it's quite clear that all these rules that are dealing with slavery are no longer implementable, because slavery in itself is something which was against Islam. Islam was dealing with it because it was revealed at that time, and we have to go beyond that. So this is the point. There is one thing which is not said, for example, in Islam. You will never find in the Quran and the prophetic tradition saying something, for example, telling you are going to go beyond this, the presence of poor people and poverty in your society. And it's as if in the Quran you have to struggle against poverty, but there will be never a situation where there will be no poor people that you have to deal with. Even with Omar Abdul Aziz, who was the first one to be able to get rid of this situation. In fact, the principles of Islam, which is even a zakat, is to tell you, you will always have to deal with poverty. Your obligation is to strive and struggle against it, but it's part of the human destiny, which is not the case of slavery. You have an international union of scholars where you have Sunni and Shia around today, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, but it's not representing the great majority of the Muslims around the world. They don't even feel that they are represented in it. So it's Al-Ittihad al-Alami, it's something which is big, but it's not representing. So some are trying to work together. I would say that something which is international is going to be problematic. And in some dimension, it's politically motivated. For example, I was asked to be in this, and I don't know. I really have a problem with putting myself into something that we can see that it's more political than religious in the way it's sometimes expressing some of the fatwa or the vision. And mainly it's not a council where you are producing fatwa. It's much more political positioning in the world. We don't have something which is an international body for that. And I would say that what we need today, it's much more something which is a bottom-up strategy. That at the national level, still at the national level, that we may have platforms where people from a diversity of trends are coming together, which is not even happening. Even at the national level, we are not able to do that. The Muslims and the Muslim scholars are faster to come to a meeting organized by governments than by Muslims. The only time I saw all these Muslims coming together from different trends were when we had this task force set by Tony Blair. They all came. It's as if, it's a problem. It's really a problem. I really think that if we are not able to do that, and once again, it's also, don't be a spectator. Really, don't be a spectator of that. You will have the leadership many people are saying, oh, I said that once. I was in a meeting. I said, well, yes, we have to train the leaders and all this. And a woman stood up and said, no, we have to train the followers. It's, what do you want? At the end of the day, how can you organize? And I can tell you that you can do it. You can, if people coming from different trends are working together and pushing their leadership to come and to try to do something, it's possible. It's a two-way process. There are lots of goodwill around, but not enough people dedicated to that. Which is at the national level something that could be, it's very difficult. We're trying to organize something, for example, in the States next week. It's unbelievable to try. For example, you can't in the United States of America come with a leadership where if you don't get the African American in America, you don't get it. That's wrong. That's completely wrong. It's not because you are coming from Egypt and Syria and you are a medical doctor in the States that you know how it works. America has a tradition, the African American, they have something to say about it. Not even able to talk to each other. Not even able to sit. And when you try to do this, you have to face, wow, what is your intention, brother? What do you want? So I think that we have to think about it. It's one of our main challenges. And it starts by not only praying in your mosque. How can we change the mindset? I don't know if you have a specific example, but if you are dealing with something which is a sensitive case in, dealing with your health and that the medical doctor is saying this is what you have to do. And, it's a medical decision just to save you. I wouldn't see any scholar who can come and say, no, don't follow this, when it's not of his business. He doesn't know what is needed. And, once a sheikh in one of my friends in Switzerland, he was asked about, can I, the organ donation, can I take the heart of a kafir? So it's as if, kufr is in the organic heart. And the sheikh looked at him and said, okay, look, if your daughter is sick, and there is no other way but for her to get that heart, and the medical doctor is saying this is it, are you going to ask the question? Just this, projection onto what the fiqh could be, should be at, there are limits to this ethical projection on everything. That if the medical doctor is saying this is a borderline situation, this is what you should do, and this is my advice as a medical doctor, I know what I'm talking about. You can ask another doctor, this is what you can do. And then you can just say to the scholar, this is what the two doctors are telling me. If now he's telling you, it could be in a situation where your life is not in danger, so you can take a decision. But if your life is in danger, he can't tell you to, except that he's going to tell you that you are going to be, to kill yourself through this. And this is what the mindset should be. The authority in specific field is coming to the people who know. If you don't know, don't speak. And a scholar who is talking too much outside his specific field, he's making a mistake. And this is why you need to know where you ask, the fatwa. On AIDS, for example, I was facing this. Because it's a very critical discussion, we'll talk about this tomorrow. But a woman who discovered that her husband was, infected with AIDS, and it was through, blood transfusion. And she asked the question. She wanted a fatwa. Is it Islamically right for me to divorce him because I discovered that? She wants a fatwa from a scholar saying, oh, it was a mistake, it was a blood transfusion, so now you can divorce him. So when the level of understanding of Islam is you are going to leave your husband because he was facing this critical mistake and you want a fatwa, take your decision, be an adult. But my answer to this is sometimes we need fatwa on where we don't need fatwa. I say, stop talking, don't give a fatwa here. And I think it's critical. It's the childish attitude of this community, give me a fatwa to be less responsible. And if but it's a critical thing here, because if you need a fatwa to divorce him because he is sick, it's not good for you. I'm sad for you. I would say this to the woman, I'm sad for you. That you can just that this can come to your mind, that because he is sick, you're going to do that. I don't know, and why we are reaching these limits is that we are, AIDS, it's we are projecting morality on this. And it's as if you get it, there is a sense of guilt. That is unacceptable. So I think that we have to educate our brothers and sisters on this, just know from where you are getting this authority. It's a very long process. And it's also sometimes to say to our scholars, it's not of your business. And this is where our authority is completely scattered. You know, you had even scholars telling to the young French people in the streets in 2005 during the riots, issuing a fatwa against violence in the streets because they were demonstrating. So what's that? A fatwa? These citizens are saying, treat us equally. You come with a religious fatwa, you are doing exactly what the government wants you to do. Falling into the trap, Islamizing the riots. So this is where the very superficial understanding, and this is why we need this kind of education. I even had with Zaki Badawi, rahimahullah, a discussion when he was saying, it's a religious obligation to go to vote. I said, I'm sorry, don't say that. It's not a religious obligation. I can say it's your civic duty to go, but it's not a religious obligation. Because sometimes I don't want to vote. Don't tell me it's haram. You get that? This confusion, it's where education is needed. And about what you were saying, because I think it's an important, it's not really a question, it's a comment, but it's a very important comment, where this gap between the elites and the grassroots, this is where we have to be realistic. Some of the people at the grassroots level, they don't have the critical distance to come with a vision. They are so much in the reality that they cannot do it, and sometimes they lack knowledge. In between, you may have people understanding better. And you have some scholars, and as you said, few of them could come with a vision. I can tell you with 25 years working with scholars around the world, I can tell you that I was impressed 3 or 4 times with some scholars in economy, in arts. Very few are specialized. Too many are talking about too many things. And even people, when they read this book, they were telling me, oh, you come with much more questions than answers. That's fine, because I don't know the answers. I don't know, I'm just asking questions. And the only thing that I want to get is, I'm trying to get the more sophisticated questions, hoping that we'll get sophisticated answers. But I don't get them. I'm not a medical doctor, but I see that organ transplantation, if you don't put this in the economic dimension, you are lost. It's not only a medical answer, we need to have medical answers within economic order. So we need to be sophisticated here. So I would say that this is where we need to choose the scholars of the text and the context, and to bring them together. So the way you are going to do it is as important as the substance of what you are doing, to find the right persons, the right scholars, not everyone, not, you know, it's not enough to be open. It's not enough to be, you know, many people that are very head, oh, it's an open scholar, and so what? You have to be very, very sharp on the specific topic and open this comprehensive approach. And the last thing about, no, the good teacher sometimes keeps quiet. I remember that the only teacher that I remember in mathematics, he had a very specific methodology. He was struggling with the equation. And you know what? When you find it by yourself, sometimes it's stronger in your mind than when it's said by the teacher. Silence, it's a pedagogical means. And it's to rely on the human intellect. It's very important. So Allah is dealing with us with many different levels. The great majority of the Quran is about qasas, stories. Because we still are children. There is still a child dimension in us. We are children. And we like stories. And the stories have this very specific dimension. that when you listen to a story, you can listen to the same story, but we're not going to get the same understanding. Because it's coming from your history, your intelligence, your sensitivity, your emotions, empathy. It's all different. Same story, different understanding. And Allah is also talking to us as autonomous subjects. And you need to find our way. So He's telling us, this is the way, now make up your mind. And I remain silent on many issues. And this is important because it's the best way for us to understand that siru fil ard. Go, understand, try to understand this world. Be knowledgeable. Add knowledge to knowledge. But with one thing, faithfulness. So, no hindrances to your knowledge, but always ethical direction to your faith. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not telling us everything. Because it would have been a jail. No intellectual creativity. And this is why the Muslims, when they were confident with their faith, they were very, very knowledgeable with their minds. And this is the very secret of Islam. This is it. There's confidence with your heart and curiosity with your mind. Creativity. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not saying everything. You know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trusting us much more than we are trusting ourselves. So this is why we have to come back to the essence. But a good teacher is not telling you everything. By the way, the teacher who is telling you everything is a bad teacher. This is the truth. The one who is not giving you the space to find things with your mind is not a good teacher. Wallahu a'lam. Wa a'la wa ahkam.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much. But what about the other question?
There was another question.
Yeah, about pork, for example, the example of pork. We don't have a clear reason in the Quran why pork is prohibited.
Yes, that's a good question, but a quick answer to that. There is something which is important with prohibition and obligation. As we are saying, it's not always based on a reason. That our intellectual humility is to say sometimes it's coming from God and that's it. Some of the scholars afterward are trying to explain why. It's a bad meat, it's whatever science are showing us. But at the end, even in science is showing me that it's the greatest meat in the world. I'm not going to eat it. I'm not. And when the people are saying, you know what, we are fasting because of the climate. You know, Montesquieu was the French philosopher was saying everything with religions and cultures is based on climate. So you don't eat pork in southern country because it's very hot. And it's a bad meat with this climate. It's old Enlightenment relativism. It's the climate is explaining everything. That's not true. From an Islamic viewpoint, it's not true. So I'm not going to refer to the climate to say it's good and bad, or the social setting. I'm always referring to this mufti in France, or during Ramadan, during the day, when we were fasting, say, the main objective in Islam is socializing with people. So when you are fasting, just to get a cup of coffee to socialize is more important than to fast. He's a mufti. But look, from the climate, from the objectives, if you go to that direction, everything is possible. If you're not strict with the rules. No discussion on the fundamentals. You fast means you fast. With French, with British, with American, with whoever. And your way of socializing is after Maghrib. When it comes to eat.